Stalag Luft 3, deep in German-occupied Poland, March 1944, and Flight Lieutenant William Cameron stands in the corner of his cramped barracks holding what appears to be an ordinary wooden pencil, the kind you might find in any classroom or office, its yellow paint chipped from months of use, its eraser worn down to a nub. To any German guard conducting a routine inspection, this pencil is exactly what it appears to be. Just another piece of stationery that prisoners use to write letters home or sketch the endless boredom of captivity. But Cameron knows better, because hidden inside this innocuous writing instrument, concealed so cleverly that even the most suspicious Gestapo interrogator would never think to look, is a tiny magnetized compass needle no bigger than a grain of rice, wrapped in silk thread and sealed inside a hollowed compartment that can only be accessed by twisting the pencil's metal ferrule in a specific way. This single piece of seemingly mundane equipment represents one of the most brilliant innovations of the Second World War, a deception so simple yet so profound that it would help thousands of Allied prisoners escape from Nazi captivity and evade recapture behind enemy lines, turning everyday objects into life-saving tools that gave hope to men who had every reason to believe they would spend the rest of the war behind barbed wire. The story of how a pencil became one of World War II's most effective spy gadgets begins not in some high-tech laboratory or military workshop, but in a cramped office in London's Metropole Hotel in December 1939, where a peculiar man named Christopher Clayton Hutton was assembling what would become one of the war's most secretive and ingenious organisations. Hutton, known to his colleagues simply as Clutty, was an ex-Royal Flying Corps major who had somehow managed to avoid being like every other military officer the British government had ever employed. He was eccentric to the point of being infuriating, with a complete disdain for military protocol, an inability to follow standard procedures, and a habit of requisitioning equipment first and asking permission later. His superiors at the newly formed MI9, the ultra-secret department responsible for helping prisoners of war escape, had quickly realised that Hutton could not be expected to comply with ordinary service discipline, but they also recognised that his unconventional mind was exactly what they needed, because the problem facing the British military in early 1940 was unprecedented in its scope and urgency, as thousands of British and Commonwealth soldiers were being captured by German forces sweeping across Europe, men who needed help to either evade capture in the first place or escape from prisoner of war camps once they were caught. And the lessons of World War I had been harsh and clear, when Allied prisoners had been left to fend for themselves, with no training, no equipment, and no support from their own military, resulting in countless men spending years in captivity, who might have made it home if only someone had thought to give them the tools they needed. Hutton understood that the key to successful escape and evasion was not elaborate plans or complex equipment, but rather the simplest possible tools hidden in the most innocuous possible places, because German guards would be searching for obvious escape aids, looking for maps, compasses, tools and weapons that fit their preconceived notions of what an escaping prisoner might carry. The brilliance of Hutton's approach was recognizing that if you could hide a compass inside something that guards saw every day, something so ordinary that they would never think to examine it closely, you could get that compass past even the most thorough search. And that's when Hutton began to think about pencils, those ubiquitous writing instruments that every prisoner was allowed to possess, that guards would see dozens of times during any inspection without giving them a second thought. The challenge was miniaturization, creating a compass small enough to fit inside a pencil without making the pencil feel or behave any differently than a normal one. Hutton and his team worked through dozens of prototypes, experimenting with different sizes and configurations until they developed what they called the Swinger, a magnetized compass needle so small it could be suspended from a single thread of cotton, yet accurate enough to point reliably north. This tiny needle, usually diamond-shaped with small holes drilled at each end and filled with luminous radium paint to mark north and south, could be hidden inside a hollowed-out pencil compartment that replaced the graphite core, with enough room left over to include a small silk map that could be rolled into a cylinder no thicker than the pencil's wooden casing. The manufacturing process for these pencil compasses required extraordinary precision and secrecy, as Hutton worked with trusted British manufacturers who were never told exactly why they were producing these specialised items, companies that thought they were making ordinary pencils with slightly unusual specifications. The pencils themselves looked absolutely authentic from the outside, complete with proper paint, proper ferrules, proper erasers, and even proper lead at one end, so they could actually be used for writing, because the last thing Hutton wanted was for a prisoner to accidentally grab an escape pencil and discover it didn't write, potentially exposing the secret to German guards during a routine inspection. The hollowed compartment was typically located in the middle section of the pencil, accessed by unscrewing the ferrule or splitting the pencil along a hidden seam that had been carefully disguised to look like natural wood grain. Inside, wrapped in silk or tissue paper so thin it was almost translucent, the prisoner would find the magnetized compass needle, sometimes accompanied by a tiny map printed on silk that could be unfolded to show escape routes across occupied Europe, safe houses marked in code, and frontier crossings that might offer a way to freedom. The distribution of these pencil compasses to Allied servicemen followed a carefully orchestrated system that began before men even left for combat operations, as RAF aircrew and soldiers heading to active theatres of war were issued what became known as escape kits, compact packages containing various items designed to help them evade capture if shot down or cut off behind enemy lines. These kits typically included ration boxes with emergency food, purses containing local currency, tissue maps of their operational area, and the modified pencils that looked like standard issue stationery but contained the hidden compass. The genius of this approach was that if a man was captured and searched immediately after being shot down, the Germans might confiscate obvious escape aids, but they would usually allow prisoners to keep personal items like pencils, especially if those pencils appeared to be standard military issue, without any suspicious modifications. Flight Lieutenant Cameron had received his pencil compass during briefings before his bombing mission over Germany, instructions delivered in hushed tones about how to access the hidden compass, how to use it for navigation, and most importantly, how to keep its existence secret from German interrogators, who were trained to watch for any sign that prisoners possessed unauthorized equipment. But the pencil compass system reached its full potential in prisoner of war camps, where MI9 and its American counterpart, MISX, developed an even more elaborate method of getting escape aids to captured soldiers. The system relied on fake charity organizations that appeared to be sending comfort parcels to prisoners, packages containing books, games, toiletries, clothing, and other items that were supposed to make life in the camps more bearable. German regulations allowed these parcels to enter the camps after inspection, and German guards dutifully checked each one, looking for contraband, weapons, or anything that might facilitate an escape. What the guards didn't realise was that roughly 1 in every 5 parcels contained escape aids so cleverly hidden that even experienced searchers couldn't find them. Pencils arrived in boxes of stationery, looking identical to every other pencil the Germans had ever seen, some actually capable of writing so they could be tested without revealing their secret. Hairbrushes contained compasses hidden in their handles, chess pieces concealed miniature maps. Shaving brushes had hollowed stems filled with German currency, and cribbage boards could be carefully steamed open to reveal silk maps and forged identity papers layered inside. The coordination required for this system was extraordinary, with MI9 maintaining detailed records of which camps had received which items, using coded letters from prisoners to confirm receipt and request specific types of equipment. The transformation of everyday objects into escape tools extended far beyond pencils, demonstrating the incredible ingenuity of Hutton's team and the American engineers at Fort Hunt who ran MISX under the direction of Captain Robley Winfrey, essentially America's version of Q, who had spent 5 months training with MI9 in 1942 to learn every trick Hutton could teach. Winfrey returned to Fort Hunt, located on a former Washington family farm known only by its postal code, Box 1142, and established production facilities that would eventually send thousands of escape aids to American prisoners in German and Japanese camps. His team developed their own versions of pencil compasses and expanded the concept to include other writing implements, creating fountain pens with hollowed barrels containing maps, mechanical pencils that unscrewed to reveal compass needles, and even pencil clips that were themselves magnetized to function as crude directional indicators. The American contribution also included innovations like magnetized razor blades that could be floated on water to create makeshift compasses, with the Gillette company producing special blades where the G in Gillette pointed true north when the blade was balanced on a string. Buttons on military uniforms were manufactured with hidden compass needles that could be balanced on top of each other to create a functioning compass. And even shoelaces were magnetized so that if hung from a thread, they would orient themselves north-south. The psychological impact of these simple tools on prisoner morale cannot be overstated, as men who had been captured after surviving being shot down, wounded in combat, or overrun by enemy forces, often experienced crushing despair at the thought of spending years behind barbed wire, helpless and forgotten while their comrades continued fighting. The arrival of a care package containing hidden escape aids represented hope, tangible proof that someone back home was thinking about them, planning for them, working to give them the tools they needed to regain their freedom. Flight Lieutenant Cameron had received his first pencil compass in a package that appeared to contain nothing but stationery, books and toiletries, but he had been trained to look for specific signals that indicated which items were dove, meaning empty and innocent, and which were naughty, containing hidden contraband. A seemingly casual mention in an accompanying letter written by an MI9 operative posing as a concerned relative contained a code phrase that told Cameron exactly which items in the package were modified, allowing him to discreetly retrieve the escape aids without alerting guards or even other prisoners who might not be trustworthy. The knowledge that he possessed a working compass hidden in something as mundane as a pencil changed everything, transforming him from a helpless prisoner into a potential escapee, someone who had the means to navigate across hundreds of miles of hostile territory if he could just get outside the wire. The technical evolution of pencil compasses continued throughout the war, as MI9 and MI6 refined their designs based on feedback from prisoners and reports of which devices had been discovered by German security. Early pencil compasses sometimes suffered from crude construction that made them detectable to suspicious guards, with compass needles that rattled when the pencil was shaken, or compartments that opened too easily if the pencil was dropped. Hutton's team addressed these problems by developing more sophisticated sealing methods, using precision machining to create compartments that were virtually impossible to detect, even with X-ray equipment, and manufacturing compass needles so perfectly balanced that they gave no indication of their presence through weight or movement. Some later versions included multiple deception layers, with one hollowed compartment containing innocuous materials like extra eraser rubber or pencil sharpener shavings, while the actual compass was hidden in a deeper secondary compartment that would only be discovered if the pencil was completely disassembled. The manufacturing tolerances were so precise that German guards who tested pencils by writing with them, tapping them against tables, or even cutting them in half lengthwise, often failed to discover the hidden equipment because the pencils were engineered to fail in predictable ways that concealed rather than revealed their secrets. The actual use of pencil compasses by escaping prisoners required careful planning and knowledge of basic navigation techniques that were taught during MI9 training courses before men deployed to combat zones. Prisoners were instructed that the tiny compass needle, once extracted from its hiding place, needed to be suspended from a thread or balanced on a smooth surface, where it could rotate freely and align itself with Earth's magnetic field. The luminous paint marking north and south allowed for navigation even in complete darkness, crucial for prisoners who had to move at night to avoid detection. The silk maps that often accompanied the compass showed not just geography, but also locations of safe houses, resistance groups, and border crossings that could be used by escapees trying to reach neutral countries like Switzerland or Sweden, or to link up with partisan forces operating behind German lines. The combination of compass and map transformed an escaping prisoner from someone wandering blindly through hostile territory into a traveller with purpose and direction, able to maintain a bearing, estimate distances, and make informed decisions about routes and risks. The success stories of pencil compass escapes are numerous and extraordinary, though many remained classified for decades after the war ended to protect the methods and sources that had made them possible. One documented case involves a group of British officers who escaped from Stalag Luft 3 during the famous Great Escape of March 1944, several of whom carried pencil compasses that had arrived in seemingly innocent care packages over the preceding months. While most of the 76 men who escaped through the tunnel were recaptured, and 50 were executed by the Gestapo in a brutal violation of the Geneva Convention, the 3 who successfully reached freedom used their concealed compasses to navigate through Germany and into neutral territories, their tiny magnetized needles providing the constant directional reference that meant the difference between freedom and recapture. Another account describes an American bomber crew shot down over occupied France, who used pencil compasses from their escape kits to navigate through enemy territory for 3 weeks, eventually making contact with the French resistance and being smuggled through Spain to England, their compasses having guided them across mountain ranges and through forests, where a wrong turn could mean walking straight into German patrols. The German response to discovering these escape aids evolved throughout the war, with security services becoming increasingly paranoid about items being sent into prisoner camps and implementing ever more rigorous inspection procedures. By late 1943, German guards were routinely breaking open pencils, disassembling toiletries, steaming open board games, and X-raying packages looking for hidden contraband. The discovery of pencil compasses in several camps led to orders that all pencils be confiscated, or that only German-manufactured pencils approved by camp authorities would be allowed, forcing MI9 to develop new methods of smuggling compass needles inside items that were harder to confiscate or inspect. Some compasses were hidden inside false teeth that could be removed and used for navigation. Others were sewn into the linings of uniforms sent to replace worn-out clothing, and some were embedded in the wooden heels of boots where even aggressive searches failed to find them. The cat-and-mouse game between MI9's inventors and German security services became increasingly sophisticated, with each side trying to anticipate the other's moves, the British developing ever more ingenious hiding places, while the Germans implemented ever more invasive search procedures. The coordination between MI9 and the French resistance, Dutch underground and other partisan groups created an entire support network for escaped prisoners trying to reach safety, with the pencil compass serving as the essential tool that allowed men to navigate to predetermined meeting points where they could link up with guides who would shepherd them along established escape routes. These routes, known as escape lines with code names like Pat Line, Comet Line and others, moved thousands of Allied servicemen from occupied Europe back to England. But they only worked if the escapees could navigate to the initial contact points, often isolated farms or remote villages, where partisan fighters waited to receive them. The pencil compass allowed an escaped prisoner to find these precise locations in unfamiliar territory, following coordinates provided in coded messages or memorized during pre-mission briefings, turning theoretical escape routes into practical pathways to freedom. The success rate of prisoners who possessed proper navigation equipment was dramatically higher than those who tried to escape without compasses, as directionless wandering almost inevitably led to either recapture or death from exposure in the harsh European terrain. The American MISX program expanded the pencil compass concept to Pacific theater operations, where the challenge was modified by different geography and different enemies, with Japanese prisoner camps following different security procedures than German ones. American aircrews flying missions over Japanese-occupied territories received modified escape kits that included pencil compasses designed to work in tropical conditions, where humidity and heat might affect standard equipment. The compasses were sealed in water-resistant compartments, and the silk maps were treated with special chemicals that prevented mold growth in jungle environments. American prisoners in Japanese camps faced even more brutal conditions than their counterparts in Europe, with Japanese guards showing little concern for Geneva Convention protocols and routinely executing prisoners caught attempting escape. Yet the psychological value of possessing hidden escape aids remained crucial, giving men hope and purpose even when actual escape was nearly impossible, providing mental resistance against the crushing weight of captivity and torture. The legacy of the pencil compass and other MI9 escape devices extended far beyond World War II, influencing Cold War intelligence operations and modern special operations training, with the basic principle of hiding crucial equipment inside innocuous objects becoming a standard technique for operatives working in hostile territories. The CIA's Office of Technical Service developed even more sophisticated versions of concealed compasses, creating devices that could be hidden inside pens, coins, buttons, and other items that would never attract suspicion during searches. Modern military survival training still teaches soldiers about improvised navigation using magnetized needles and other field-expedient compasses, techniques that trace directly back to Hutton's innovations in 1940. The philosophy behind MI9's approach, that simple solutions are often more effective than complex ones, and that the best hiding place is in plain sight, has become foundational to covert operations and intelligence tradecraft, informing everything from agent communications to equipment concealment to cover identity development. The statistical impact of MI9 and MISX operations demonstrates the extraordinary effectiveness of their methods, with estimates suggesting that over 35,000 Allied military personnel either escaped from prisoner camps or successfully evaded capture after being shot down or cut off behind enemy lines, many of them using equipment provided by Hutton's team and Winfrey's gadget workshop. Each successful escape represented not just one soldier returned to service, but also a significant intelligence windfall, as escaped prisoners brought back detailed information about German defences, camp layouts, guard procedures, and enemy troop movements that proved invaluable for planning future operations. The debriefings of escaped prisoners provided so much useful intelligence that some military historians argue MI9's intelligence-gathering function was as important as its escape facilitation mission, with the pencil compass serving double duty as both an escape tool and a method for ensuring that men with crucial information could make it back to Allied lines. The individuals who made the pencil compass system work deserve recognition beyond what history has typically given them, starting with Christopher Clayton Hutton, who died in 1965 largely unknown, despite having invented devices that saved thousands of lives. His colleague, Charles Fraser Smith, another MI9 gadget maker, who worked from cover position at the Ministry of Supply, spent the war arranging manufacture and distribution of escape equipment through covert channels in British industry, coordinating with manufacturers who never knew the true purpose of the unusual items they were producing. Captain Robley Winfrey returned to civilian life after the war and rarely spoke about his role at Fort Hunt, his contributions to saving American prisoners remaining classified for decades. The workers at the Playing Card Company, who manufactured cards with hidden silk maps. The engineers at Gillette, who magnetized special razor blades. The seamstresses, who sewed maps into uniform linings. All of them contributed to a system that transformed ordinary objects into extraordinary tools of liberation. The final assessment of the pencil compass as a weapon of war must acknowledge that it represents something profound about the nature of intelligence work and covert operations, demonstrating that the most effective solutions are often the simplest ones, and that creativity can be as powerful as technology. In an era when military planners were developing radar, jet engines, atomic weapons, and other technological marvels that would reshape warfare, a hollowed-out pencil containing a magnetized needle proved to be one of the war's most effective innovations. Not because it was sophisticated, but because it was so simple that it was essentially undetectable, and so practical that anyone could use it. The pencil didn't win battles through firepower or destroy enemy forces through technological superiority. Instead, it saved lives one at a time, giving captured men hope in the tools they needed to regain their freedom, transforming prisoners into escapees and turning certain captivity into possible salvation. Flight Lieutenant William Cameron did eventually escape from Stalag Luft 3, not through the famous tunnel, but through a carefully planned wire-cutting operation months later. And throughout his journey across occupied Poland and into Czechoslovakia, the pencil compass he had received in that innocuous care package remained his constant companion, its tiny needle pointing steadfastly north, while German patrols searched for him and Gestapo agents questioned villagers about escaped prisoners. He made it to Switzerland after 3 weeks of travelling only at night, sleeping in barns and haystacks, eating what he could steal or beg from sympathetic farmers who risked their lives to help him. Years later, when asked what single piece of equipment had been most crucial to his survival, Cameron didn't mention weapons or radios or forged documents. He mentioned the pencil compass, that simple device that had looked so ordinary but had given him the one thing an escaping prisoner needed most: the ability to know which direction led toward freedom and which direction led back to captivity. And somewhere, in a museum display case, if you know where to look, you can still find examples of these pencil compasses, their wooden cases cracked with age, their paint faded, their erasers hardened to uselessness, but their magnetized needles still pointing north, still ready to guide someone home, still bearing silent witness to one of World War II's smartest and simplest spy tricks.